Hi, everybody. Good evening. It is Wednesday, February 24th, 2016. I think one of the things that we can do well at Evoke is preparing parents for manipulation. Harriet Lerner, the author of The Dance of Anger, calls it change back energy. In family systems theory, they call it homeostatic mechanisms. So lots of people have different names for it, but what we want to do is empower you in a way or educate you in such a way that you'll be able to respond empathically, sensitively, with a great amount of capacity for your children, but without the instinct to necessarily capitulate, to compromise your boundaries, to give up a core important part of you or your values. The first thing to think about with manipulation is it's not intrinsically bad, right? The capacity to read somebody, to know what they want to hear, to be able to speak to it, that's a gift, right? That's what makes people incredible teachers or salespeople. In the context of a relationship, of course, it can be harmful. But this might be the most important thing that I'll say tonight. Part of it is when a parent says, my child's a manipulator, when they say they're very manipulative, and we hear that a lot, part of what they're really doing is they're confessing their own vulnerability, right? Because what is specifically manipulative to you is not necessarily manipulative to me, or vice versa. Right? I have certain triggers, certain wounds, certain issues that people have access to in my life. And that's why I can be at times more effective with your children, and in some ways you'd be more effective with my children in resisting that. So manipulation is a word that we assign to somebody when we're really admitting our vulnerability to their capacity, to their abilities. The accusation, more appropriately or accurately, could be directed at us. Right? This is what I struggle with. When he says, when she says or does this. This is where I get tripped up. This is where I get confused. And I think that's important because like a lot of our relationship issues, we want to put the problem out there on the other. Right? When in the healthy, maybe more evolved way, we can take it on ourselves. The idea of, I'm reading these two quotes, to influence or manage shrewdly or deviously, he manipulated public opinion in his favor, or to tamper with or falsify for personal gain, tried to manipulate stock prices. Those examples, of course, are going to have negative connotations or denotations to them, but really where it comes down to it is it harmful, right? Is it harmful to the relationship? Is it harmful to one's own self, one's own growth, to try to get other, as parents sometimes, I think we don't really understand how manipulative we can be, right? We're trying to get our children to feel and think certain things. We ask our therapist, one of the most common questions that I get asked that I try to redirect and answer the right question is, instead of thinking about changing them, focus on changing you. Focus on being more assertive, being more clear, being more aware of your boundaries, being more honest, letting go of the outcome. And you'll find that your power will increase in many ways. But if I'm just a tool, if I'm hired, in other words, to give you tools to change your child, I'm really just teaching you to be a better manipulator. And so that can be harmful in the relationship. Like I said, the idea of calling somebody else manipulative is really more of a confession than it is an accusation. I want to teach you about projective identification because it's a fascinating psychological principle. I think most of us know what projection is, right? We project parts of ourselves onto other people, right? It's easier to see faults and flaws or even at times to see strengths and great characteristics in other people. So we take parts of ourselves and we project it onto other people. A lot of times if somebody is going to compliment me about something, really what they're saying is, that's the part in me that I see. Somebody will compliment me as a therapist or as a teacher, and I'll say, you're really just talking about yourself. I mean, thank you, but it's really, those are the parts in you. That's the wisdom in you. That's the insight in you. So that's what projection is, taking parts of ourselves and projecting it onto other people. Projective identification has a piece of it that is intrusive, a piece of it that is coercive. Projective identification is not just seeing it in you, but treating you in such a way to provoke a certain kind of response. And so, for us, that's what happens. When I get treated like a guru or a probation officer or a priest or a rabbi or a police officer, right? And then the person is trying to get me to respond in those ways, right? They're trying to pull that out of me, right? And it's seductive, right? It's triggering for me. That's projective identification. There's a cool principle with projective identification, because when you're feeling it, it is evidence of what the other person is feeling in many ways, right? So somebody who gets very upset with me and attacks me, and I feel hurt or small or afraid, that can be a sign to how they're feeling in the relationship in that moment. So there's value in looking at my feelings, my reactions to others, in the place that they're putting me in. I remember I was having a discussion, an argument with my wife years ago, and I remember saying, I don't know who you're talking to. I don't even like the person you're talking to, but I don't think you're talking to me, because that's not me, what I feel and think, right? But the feelings that I was beginning to have were very, very unhappy feelings, very, very unpleasant feelings. And I know I do that to her and my children, and I do it to each other too. So projective identification is projection, but it pulls out, it induces a reaction. And when we're the subject of it, we can begin to feel. So a lot of times when parents get letters, have interactions with their children, I want to spend a lot of time saying, how do you feel? What's your inclination? What do you want to do? Right? And then to unpack that, to understand where's the projective identification, where's the trigger, where's the vulnerability, what are you needing to be for your child? And then when we can unpack that, and even maybe if they're willing to go to this place, connect it back to their own family of origin, their own context that they grew up, then it has less power over them, right? They can then get clear and then respond to their child based on what's most helpful for the child and what they believe in, instead of all these old ghosts, all these old patterns and issues. Like I said, that's what it says. Some projective identification, someone projects onto another in such a way to induce a reaction consistent with the projection. Part of what we learn to do is resist it. Part of what we learn to do is pay attention to the induction, seeing what we're asked to do. So when a parent says, I feel sorry for them, I want to rescue them, my response is, that's exactly what they wanted you to feel from this. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again tonight. I remember I was covering for a therapist for some reason or another. He was on vacation or sick. I can't remember what it was. But I went into his group, and I did sessions with him a couple of weeks in a row. And when I was covering for him, when I walked in the first day, this student, I'm telling the story wrong. I covered for him for 1 week. And over the weekend prior to my field visit, this student had been taken out of the field for, I think, an ingrown toenail, and they did the simple procedure on it, and he was going back out to the field, and then the storm got really bad, so the staff decided to hole up in a hotel in town and not take him out at night because the roads would be sketchy and it'd be a lot safer. So he had written a letter home to his mother and said, this is what happened, I stayed in the hotel, these are all the circumstances, and his mother called me very, very upset, saying, what did you do? I didn't authorize this. I didn't know he was going to stay in a hotel. I knew he was going to get some procedure. I didn't know he's going to stay in a hotel. I don't feel comfortable with that. And I said, I listened to it. I said, I'm totally sorry. With me covering, I could have communicated that better. My fault. We dropped the ball. I apologize. Won't happen again. And I said, now, are you open to a therapeutic process around this? That's the customer service issue. That's clear. That was my fault. I need to do that better. We need to fix that with our staff. Can I talk about a therapeutic issue with you? And she said, sure, absolutely. And I said, I think he wanted you to panic. I think he wanted you to be afraid. And I think that might be a dance that the two of you had. And she said, absolutely not. He mentioned it in my letter in passing. It wasn't a big deal. It was an afterthought almost, is the way that he mentioned it in the letter. I said, well, I don't know him. Maybe that's the case, but I wanted you to just consider that. And she said, okay, but I don't think so. I think you're wrong. Well, now I drive into the group for the week that I was covering. I got out of my car a few hundred yards from the group. As I was walking into the group, this one student who I hadn't met yet said, did you talk to my mom? And I said, I'm Brad, and I introduced myself, and he said, did you talk to my mom? And I said, what about? He said, well, I got taken out of the field to get a toenail. I stayed at a hotel, and I wrote her about it. And he was so acutely aware of his mother's reaction, he didn't even wait for me to get into the group. He met me halfway between the road and the group. He was so aware of that. And then I shared this example with Mom she was surprised by. And she was surprised how subtle, how it appeared and looked so subtle, but how also very conscious and intentional it was on the child's part. So that's a great example of an induction that she wasn't aware of and wasn't even aware that it was happening, and that dance was happening. I'll talk about some general techniques, and then I'm going to read from a sheet that we have called Techniques to Manipulate Parents, and talk about a couple of different ways of looking at it. Guilting, right? Make you feel guilty. Make you feel like you're doing the wrong thing. I've said this many times that over the years, more often than not, when I ask parents, when they say, I know I didn't do the right thing by my child, for my child, and I ask the question why, their response is because I felt guilty. I felt like I was hurting him or doing something wrong. Now I look back and realize I did the wrong thing. So our children have access unconsciously to our guilt, right? We learn from our own context growing up. We were taught that when we made somebody upset, particularly mom and dad, that it was our fault, that was about us. So having been raised in that context ourselves, now we have the same dance, only reversed with our children, right? If they're upset or unhappy, it's our fault. We did something wrong. Now, we would argue against that. Almost all of us would. And we would even question and challenge, why do they blame us? Right? We would say that out loud, many of us. But the fact of the matter is, they blame us because it works, because it hooks us. Right? It's very unrewarding to blame somebody who doesn't take it on. Right? If we don't take it on over time, it'll go away and diminish. But we take it on by justifying ourselves, by explaining ourselves. I was just talking to a parent this week, and they were giving me some explanation for a position that they wanted to take. I said, you don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it. You just get to be you. That's enough. And I said to her, do you know why you feel the need to explain it? And she said, I don't know. Maybe you know. And I said, my best guess is because being you wasn't okay. Right? And because this idea that we were taught that we upset our parents or made them happy. We were responsible for their feelings. And so that wiring got into us, and now we play that out with our children. I talk about this idea that our children shoot us with the bullets that we give them. Right? We write on the name of the bullet what we don't want to be. An uncaring dad, a distracted dad, an unfair dad, an unloving dad. Whatever it is. Pick the word. Fill in what word you want. And our children unconsciously know that's what to accuse us of. That's what to call us in order to trigger us. And it can't not be taught. Right? That dynamic comes out. And it's so powerful when I work with your children. Because I'll have a relationship with my clients over the years. And they'll say something to me about me. And my response to them often is, that's interesting. That must have worked for you at home. They'll say, you don't care about me. You're just doing this for the money. Right? Whatever it is, and I'd say, did that worked for you at home when you accuse your parents of not caring? Because doesn't do anything to me. I don't have questions about or need to prove anything to you. And what I find is over a few weeks, they stop saying that stuff to us. They really do, because it doesn't have any traction for them. That's part of the value of this context. As you get them out of their context, they get a different response, and then they have to start asking questions of themselves. So part of our healing as parents is to heal that woundedness in us, to know that we're okay, to know that we're loving, that we're doing the best we can, that we're extraordinarily imperfect, and that's okay. And that we may have even done, all of us do harmful things to our children, right? And to the extent that we work through our shame and our guilt, to that extent, we can actually see it in ourselves. So when we do that work, when we look at our own family of origin, when we go to Al-Anon, when we go to Codependence Anonymous, when we go to therapy, and we do our work, we develop a courage to see it clearly and can own it, can apologize for it, and can step forward through it. So part of it is coming to terms with our own darkness. Carl Jung said, the best way to deal with the darknesses of others is to come to understand your own darkness. And that's what this work is about. Knowing our wounds, knowing our scars, knowing our trauma, knowing our shame, moving past the shame, developing a courageous approach to looking at ourselves. And then we can just be there for our children. That's a powerful, powerful process for them. Some parents feel guilty for not forgiving their children because their children say, you don't forgive me or you don't trust me, right? Your children say that all the time. And my response is, yeah, I don't. Not yet. And I don't have to explain it or be right about it. It's what I feel comfortable. It's where I'm at right now. But the implication, and parents think, is if I don't trust them, if I don't forgive them on their terms when they want to, then I'm going to destroy their self-esteem. What you can do is just own it. Just say, I'm not ready. It's mine. You do you. I got to deal with this. I have my own stuff. And I have to work through it. And I'm sorry. I wish I could be there for you right now, and I can't. I apologize for that. But it's mine. But what we do is we get into arguments about the level of trust, right? We debate it with our children. You need to get here. And then we end up arguing with them because they think they're there. We see them as here. And then we have arguments about who's right or wrong. Right? But the fact of the matter is I just get to trust you and forgive you when I can, when I am able to. And then you get to do you. And if your eye, if the child's eye, or anyone's eye, if there could be any partner, any relationship, if their eye is on whether or not you forgive them and trust them, then they're not doing their work. They're paying too close attention to the outcome that has nothing to do with them, that's outside of their control. Promising, I should have put on here selling. Anytime they're selling you anything. That's why I love letters that get toward the end of the stay, after a child has turned that corner, where they stop selling you something, promoting something, trying to convince you of something. How far they've come, how much they've learned, how good they are. Right? If you feel yourself being sold something, then you know not to trust it. Because it doesn't matter. You're not in charge of their truth. You're in charge of you. Terrorizing, some of you can attest to that at home, right? Holding you hostage with their anger, with their rage, with their defiance, with even their self-harm. Children don't know this until they have children of their own, but there's no greater love in most people's lives than that of love toward their children. And so to threaten yourself to have control over your parents is the most devious place that you can go to, right? It's the most terrorizing place. You're holding the child hostage. If somebody threatened to kill your kid in this world, if somebody threatened that, unless you gave them what you want, you would have the strongest reaction a person could have. Well, it is happening for some of you, but it's happening that your kid is threatening themselves. So that's a form of terrorizing. It is made to make you feel scared. And the more we can become aware of this, the more we can pull ourselves out of that and just say, I can't save you. I can save myself. I can learn to be a more whole person so I can be present with you and see you more clearly. But I can't do this way. I can't be in this kind of relationship. And that's the transformation that we do in the family process here. Threatening or blackmail, right? There's a difference between threatening and setting a boundary as a parent or as a child. Threatening has an emotional intensity that's trying to get the outcome you want. Setting a boundary is saying to your partner, you can drink if you want. I can't stop you doing that. But I can tell you what I need to have in my life and what I'm okay with. And I'm not okay with alcohol in our home. I'm not okay with violence. I'm not okay with cutting. I'm not okay with doing nothing but skipping. Whatever it is, you get to say that. The difference is that we threaten. I've threatened in my life to try to get this person to do the thing that I wanted them to do. That's the difference. It has that emotional component and that piece where I'm trying to control you instead of setting a clear boundary. Clients will say, students will say, I will fail, I will not change, I will get worse, I will dig in. I often had this this assignment that I would give to our families that had the biggest struggles. I would say to them, write a letter to your child and say, I've realized I'm learning through this process, I can't control you. And so I'm going to stop trying. And I'm going to focus on me and what I can change. And I'm going to let go of the outcome. Because if we pay attention to these outcomes, right? All I can have is integrity, be clear, send the message that I want to that comes from my values, my beliefs, what I'm comfortable with, and you get to decide. but I'm going to stop paying attention on my weekly phone calls with my Evoke therapist. I'm going to stop paying attention to whether or not they respond, my child responds. Sometimes I would even have parents write letters to other clients or students in the group, not their child. Sometimes I would encourage them not to read their child's letters. These are the stuck ones. To change the focus from changing the child to changing yourself and liberating yourself and getting out of that power struggle. Essentially, the child often says, I am sad or upset and you need to fix it, right? And that for all of us, since our identity is so closely associated with being a parent, and we think sometimes that our job as parents is to remove the suffering from our children's life, that's instinctual, right? This is an easy one to fall into. I like this last one, is when a child accuses a parent, you are blank. And the only way to prove that you're not is to blank. You're unfair. The only way to prove that you're not unfair is to take me home now. You're controlling. The only way to prove that you're not controlling is let me live my own life without holding up any expectations in the relationship. You don't love me. The only way to prove that you love me is to let me come home. Let me go back to school, whatever it is, right? And so I'll often say, because then the child will say, especially when the parents and or I have done effective, appropriate listening, and the child says, my parents don't get me. And I say, well, how can they prove to you that they get you? Is there any way they can prove it? Because if the only way they can prove that they get you or understand you is if they give you what you want, I think you're going to be in a tough spot. Because somebody might understand your pain or your sadness, your frustration or anger, but they might not be willing to give you what they want, and that's a no-win situation for them, right? You're putting them in a corner that they can't get out of. So how can they show you that they understand where you're coming from, short of giving them everything that you need or want? I asked our therapist about it. These are the therapist's ideas around manipulation. Guilt is the biggest barrier to healthy and effective parenting, right? I talked about this the other night. I talk about it in my chapter on shame and guilt. We associate guilt with conscience. We associate it with morality. It's just as likely to lead us astray, to lead us to doing something outside of our integrity as it is to do something in our integrity. So guilting is something that prevents us from being present with our children in a way where we can be helpful with them because of our own stuff, our own background. Flight to health, right? That's when the child says, I'm cured. Hey, you know what? I think this is a good program. I'm glad you sent me here. I've been here 2 weeks, but I'm cured. The first 2 weeks were fantastic. Anything more than 2 weeks, you're wasting your time and money on me. So they're cured and they're fixed. And the fact of the matter, most of my students, what I remark to them and to the parents is, you made an amazing amount of progress. Amazing amount of progress in a couple of months. And in my mind, you moved this far, which is amazing. And of course, their thought is, and you can't see the ends of my hands in the picture, they think they moved this far. I agree with you, you did amazing work. But this is hard, lifelong stuff. And this flight to health, I'm cured thing, I don't know what that would look like. I don't know that. Splitting the executive system, that could be splitting mom from dad. There could be step-parents involved, of course, too. Mom from mom or dad from dad. It could also be splitting the therapist and parents. That happens a lot, right? They try to split us. I remember one time years ago, I had a student who got hurt out in the field. This is almost 20 years ago. He was actually playing around over a ledge and fell off of it and got really hurt while they were setting up camp. And he ended up finishing the program, but he got hurt. He was in the hospital, and mom flew out to see him, of course. And so I was sitting with her, and we were talking to him, and he was talking about everything, and and I was helping mom with her boundaries. She'd asked me to stay in there. And it was such a funny moment when he turned to me and he said, hey, Brad, could you excuse us? I just want to talk to my mom alone. And I said, that's up to her, I guess. I'm here if she wants me to be here. And she said, no, she wanted me to stay. And then he ended up going back out to the field and finished the program in a couple of days. But it was so conscious in his mind that this person that was supporting and empowering mom was getting in the way of me doing my thing with her. So watch for splitting of the executive system. Sometimes they'll shame you for relying on support. You're just regurgitating what the therapist is telling you, right? Isn't that incredible? Because on the one hand, they're saying you're screwed up. And on the other end, they're saying, and by the way, don't go to experts for help. You're so weak. You're so pathetic. So again, it's a nice way to paint you into a corner. My response is, I think having a family therapist, a family coach, a parent coach, I think it's an excellent way to improve yourself. I went to one of my children's therapists this week to show up and to see what I could learn, to give her a process with him, but also to maybe, one of the things I said to the therapist is, I want to learn from you ways that I can be there more effectively with my daughter. And so hopefully you guys can do some work, and if there's anything that comes out of it that you observe, want to share with me, I'm happy to learn from that also. So shaming you for relying on support, getting coaching. Sometimes they'll say, I'm not manipulating, I'm just telling you how I feel. Once is okay, but a lot of times, and this is a skill in the book that I talk about, ask them what their intent is, what they would like from you. If they repeat the same I feel statement or the same feelings over and over again, one of two things is happening. They either don't think you're listening, or they want something more than you to listen. They want something else to happen. So checking on their intent is an effective way of kind of finding out where that line is between manipulation and telling you how they feel. Kids holding parents accountable for holding drugs. It's not a problem to say, I'm angry with my family, I don't like the drugs, the conflict. That's okay. There's a different quality about it when they're sharing feelings versus when they're saying, so I don't have to look at myself. All right? You know, if a parent is drinking too much, my question isn't, are they drinking too much because the child tells me? My question to the parent was, do you think it's a problem? Like, what do you see? I'll work on it in that, I'll support you in that aspect, but not in the aspect of the child using it as a distraction or a smokescreen. If the child wants to express hurt about it, then I'll listen, I'll empathize, and I will ask you, beg you to listen to it also. And then you get to ask yourself, is this healthy? Is this getting in the way? So there are two different things that we can work on with respect to looking at the parents' behavior choices in this way. Parents will ask me about this idea that their child just wants them to move on. Let's just look at in the future. Sometimes I hear parents say they don't want to look back. And let's make sure that we feel and look at everything. That we don't bury it under the rug. That we don't cut it off at the surface like a weed that still is growing underneath the dirt. Let's make sure that we've had, and not everybody's going to want to move on at the same time or at the same pace. And if one is the offender, and that's a dangerous word to use, but if I've offended or hurt you, then it's important for me to recognize that forgiveness and moving on is going to come on your terms, not on mine. Not on when I need you to move on. Right? And if I'm in my healthiest place, most accountable place, I'll have empathy and patience for you, and I won't have an agenda for you to move on. So moving on, we all get to decide when we move on, and we get to look to our support sources to help us with that and to get clear about that. Some children will withdraw from their parents' affection because they know that's the most frightening thing. I have more parents who are afraid of being abandoned by their children than I have children that are being abandoned by their parents, and it's not even close. Right? Most parents resist or struggle with this intervention or other interventions. I know I have many, many, many times in my life as a father because I'm afraid that I'm going to lose the love of my children. I'm asking them to take care of me in that way. And so again, going back and healing that so we don't need that from them is an important part of the evolution in parenting and growing up and being adult. Our own work. Sometimes children share a lot of insight, and it's tempting, and even for me, it's one of my seductions, if you will, to be impressed with insight. I like insight. I like ideas, you might imagine. And part of what I ask parents to do is you don't have to decide right away with what they're saying they've learned. Watch it. It'll show up. That's the wonderful thing about wilderness therapy is it shows up. Be patient. Stop feeling like you need to draw a conclusion, make a judgment, make a decision based on what they say they've learned. Let's watch it and see how it shows up. And then sometimes I have children sharing all kinds of insights, but you can't see any of it. You don't see their religion, if you will, in them. They talk about it, but you don't see it in them. And sometimes parents are blind to that because we can get so intoxicated with the aha moments. Like I said, they know your guilt button. Um, they know what works, and they have access to it, and you've taught them that. And the threat of withdrawal, the threat of them being overwhelmed is strong triggers for just about any parent to be pulled into something that's outside of their integrity, outside of their center, outside of their circle. Parents will ask me, is it internalized, or is he or she acting, or are they being secure? Are they telling the truth? And my response is, I have guesses, I don't know. The best way is if it has legs. Right? I think that's what parents, I've had children feel serious, honest, powerful emotions. But that doesn't always translate automatically or immediately into change. So part of what we do with experiential therapy is we pay more attention to the doing than we do to the things that they say. Let's go over this from the sheet, how to manipulate your parents. The adolescent game plan. Wear them down, hit them where it hurts, and leave them tired and confused. Sometimes it's just about the war of attrition, right? And we just need peace and serenity because we're overwhelmed. Defiance. Just do what you want anyway, and see if your parents get so disgusted that they'll just give up reinforcing the rules and let you do what you want. Begging. Please, please, please. Bargaining, explicit or implied. And implied bargaining is similar to a bribe, for example. Cleaning the house first and asking them to do something. You know the difference between rewarding and bribing? Bribing is the reward comes before the behavior. Rewarding is the reward comes after the behavior. So that's an important thing to remember. Bribing is less effective, less optimal, less healthy than rewarding. Timing and cornering. Ask mom and dad for permission or something when they're busy or on the phone or stressed out and unable to process the situation. I remember one time I was actually doing a webinar, and my son, teenage years, handed me a note, just like it was happening right now, handed me a note asking me for something. And I remember trying to answer it, and I wanted to be a good dad. The enemy of being a good dad is wanting to be a good dad. I wanted to be a good dad, and I didn't want to be mad. And then I stopped, and I said, not now. But my first instinct was to go in all those other ways. Repeating, especially with cell phones and electronics, I think this is that timing and cornering one can be especially effective. Repeating, make the same request over and over and see if you can get a different answer than no. You've got nothing to lose. Crying, acting pathetic, give parents the message that only they can make it better if they would just do something. That's similar to my version of, if you do this, the only way to prove that you're not this is if you do this. Irritation, bug your parents enough so it feels like an ancient Chinese torture, and your parents will give right in just to shut you up. This works really well in stores, church, other people's homes, and public places. Isn't that so true? And this is where we can begin to set our boundaries and have discussions about it and say, I'm not going to respond that way. And if I do in a weak moment, I'm going to retract. I'm going to come back. Demanding justification. I see this a ton with our parents. And parents believe that they need to explain themselves and just say, this is not what I'm comfortable with. This is not what I want in my home. This is not what I want in this relationship. And I don't have to explain why. Misquoting, very effective when used with splitting. Quote your parent as having said next week when she actually said maybe next week. I hear that all the time in our program. My parents said I could come home. My parents said it would only be 5 weeks. My parents guaranteed this or that about the program. And parents say, well, not exactly. I said it could be. I said this. Promises, I promise to clean my room after I get back. It doesn't matter if the promise is kept or not. Splitting, sometimes we call this shopping. Ask mom and dad separately or to do something that they don't agree on. See if you can get them to argue and thus deflect the issue away from your request. I see this with therapists too. With staff, we talk about staff shopping. Guilt tripping, give your parents a message. If you really love me, you would let me. That's similar to the one that I described earlier. Threatening, either explicit or implied, could be a threat to get even, show them or hurt yourself, or just to defy them, remember. You're in control. Punishing family by actions, a payback, for example. Accidentally tracking mud, play music too loud, or stay in the bathroom too long. A sullen face, sulking, or silent pouting are helpful. Your bad parents, complain, say you think I deserve it. Laugh at your parents, point out their parents are stupid, and or point out that your parents are inconsistent. Hurting them, rarely tell them or show them that you love them, respect them, or will in adulthood. appreciate what they have done for you. Swear to them that they'll never see their grandkids unless they straighten up. Parents, listen to this when they're making the placement of Evoke or even after Evoke. I will never love you again. When I turn 18, you'll never see me again. Once I'm financially independent, I'll never look back. Lying, either by commission or omission, of course, that's an obvious one. Helpless, behave in a way to try to convince your parents that they are helpless. Sometimes I show that. We have this assignment and we show it out there. I remember I was doing it actually in a family session one time where I brought this out and started to go over. I asked the parents and the child to identify the ones that were most effective and common in their family. I asked the parents to identify which ones they were most vulnerable or susceptible to. I even think this should be a good exercise for most of you, to identify that, to tell your child what has worked the best, in your opinion, that they've done with you from these lists. And I've had a mother, I remember one mother said to me, I can't do that. I'm just giving them ammunition. I said, it's already there. Naming it takes away power, doesn't add to it. Naming it ruins it. So I think it's not a bad exercise to begin to talk about it, to become aware of, have a dialogue with your children about what works and what doesn't work. I think that's very, very powerful. I've seen it be very powerful. So what you do, you know yourself. Be honest with yourself and your vulnerabilities. You don't have to fix it, just be aware. You don't have to be perfect, otherwise your children are doomed. But what is important for you is to be on your journey, to be looking at yourself, to be an unfinished project, to know that you are a project, and to change your project from your child is your project to you are your project. That's what they need. That's the burden that they need lifted off of them. That takes away their capacity their ability, to manipulate you, which is about you. Your children are most of your children are specifically sensitive, clever, smart, emotionally savvy. That is true of all of them. And being manipulated is your responsibility. And it's okay. We all get it. Every one of us, including me, gets it all the time. And just owning it is the first step toward healing. Stick together in a group. Get support. Look at peers, Al-Anon, Codependence Anonymous, therapists. Those are important. We use co-therapy sometimes because co-therapy can help us get unstuck sometimes, right? When I have a co-therapist or when I'm a co-therapist, I have somebody that can help me stay above water, help me be conscious. React slowly. I think the we'll see response, attitude, and response is a very, very effective one to use with your children. We'll see. Mom and Dad, I'm fixed. We'll see. Mom and Dad, I'll never do this again. We'll see. And it doesn't have to be said. You don't need to be condescending about it, but just adopt that attitude. Adopt that position, I should say. You have permission to take time and you have permission to change your mind. You walk into a dentist's office and you promise your child who's anxious, you're just going for a checkup, and you get in the dentist's office and the dentist says, well, we could just do that, but there's an abscess here, and if we don't treat it, it runs the risks of serious infection and serious permanent problems. You don't then leave the dentist office because you promised on the front end that you were just going in for a checkup. You say to your child, I'm sorry, I have new information, and we're going to stay here until this gets fixed. Same thing at Evoke. If you get new information, if you have a new awareness, a new way to see something, to understand something, it's okay to change your mind. You have a right to. Focus on what you do. Parents will say when they're picking up their child, when they're planning on transition, when their child's coming home, what if he or she does this or that? My response is, okay, we'll role play some things. We'll prepare you for some things, but look at your relapse. Look at your work and focus on that. When you focus on that, you're empowered, you're less anxious, you're less depressed, you're more liberated. Focus on those pieces. Focus on your intentions rather than outcomes. Parenting principles see parenting principles as an end rather than a means to an end. Right? I talk about that all the time. There's several quotes about that in the book. All right, Michael, I'm happy to look at any questions that are topic related before I go on into non-topic related questions. None have come in yet. I'll save you some time. I'll go over our slides in a couple minutes. And then if you have any questions, submit them. And I'll look at them on the next Q&A slide. All right, here's our upcoming workshops. Our Heroic Parenting. Anybody wants to come do parenting deep work, for that, come on March 24th, 27th. Finding You is similar to a Heroic Parenting, only it's Adults can also come, but it's the same program. It's just that we allow for non-parents to come. We had non-parents in our recent one, and we also had parents. But it's the same curriculum. If you're a parent, it's the same curriculum. And then heroic journeys are for families. You can also do custom ones. This is for deep personal work. The Entrada Parent Workshop is psychoeducational, inspirational, large group context teaching, some experiential work. Upcoming parent support groups, there's New York, Houston, and Chicago. I will be in Houston and Chicago. Gregory Koufakos, of course, is running the one in New York City. So if you're in those cities, please let us know. Email Stephanie at evoketherapy.com to RSVP. Let us know if you're coming. Pursuits is our high adventure trip. That can be for families or young adults, so you can schedule those. We want all of you to attend 6 of these meetings while you're with us. Don't wait till the end. Here's our social media addresses. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Evoke Therapy. Facebook, search Evoke Therapy programs. And then our Evoke blog. Here's the book. You can get it on Amazon, also Audible and CD purchase. Go to our Parent Alumni Foundation page for a list of books by topic that our therapists have recommended. 5% of the money, if you go there, goes to charity. Or 10%. I can't remember if it's 10 or 5. It'll tell you on the page. I think my daughter, whose sister was sent to Evoke, is super angry. She doesn't agree and feels we ruined her life. I suppose my response is just listen, understand. Tell her you're sorry that you ruined her life and how can I be helpful. And if she begins to ask you for things that are outside of your integrity, then you're sorry that you can't do that. If she asks you to compromise something you believe in, then you can't do that. But empathy, understanding, compassion, humility, sensitivity are all okay. If you get into the mode of trying to prove to her that she's wrong or that you did, and my response is, I'm doing the best I can. I don't know. I may have made a mistake. This is my best guess. Right? I don't need to be right. I get to decide. I get to do me. I have to make decisions one way or the other. I don't know. I will continue to listen. But just listen to her mostly. Listen to her anger. Tell her you don't know. Tell her you're doing the best you can. You could be wrong. And then ask her what she can do. And if she asks you to do something that is outside of what you feel comfortable with, then you can tell her that I just can't do that. I'm so, so sorry. Question from the same person also. She doesn't want to go to therapy herself, even though we are requiring it. She was digging her heels in. I don't know her age. Maybe you can tell me her age. But part of it is, I think my best idea about bringing people into therapy, children into therapy, or spouses into therapy, is that we say to them, I need to go to therapy to work on some stuff. I need you to come to help me. I want you to come to help me. Will you come to help me? In the case of a child, we can demand it, right? We can require it. But I think if we approach it from, I need help. And then when you walk in, it's not a technique or a trick. It really is help, right? So you can set boundaries and consequences around that and privileges associated with doing it and consequences and limitations, but you need help. And you need help with her. By the way, have her attend the sibling webinars and have her tell me all her angry things that she has. I would be happy to model it for you and to listen and to validate it. So I would love to. In fact, we should probably have some sibling webinars in our archive library, but when we have the next live one, which will be in a couple of weeks, love to hear from her and all of her anger. All right. All right, folks, thank you for your questions and participation. Good group tonight. I'm going to be at a personal retreat because I need to get less crazy. So I'm going to go on a personal retreat next week for myself. And then I will be back on Monday, March 7th at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And we'll be discussing the drama triangle and the 3 faces of the victim. Hope to see you then. Hope these points of contact are helpful. Have a great week and a half and take care. Bye-bye.